Okay, hello the internet. Yeah, so this video is apparently cursed. No matter what I do, I can't seem to get a recording of this that I actually like all the way through. Even if I break it out and it takes, it's just something's always wrong, or there's some glitch or something somewhere that's bugging me about it, so I end up having to re-record much of it over and over and over again. So I'm hoping this one actually comes out well, and we can use it. But anyway, so the subject of today's video is going to be Skyrim, and very specifically, this little guy here, ModOrganizer2, on Linux, Debian Linux specifically, but this should work pretty distro agnostically, I think, so you should be able to do it on pretty much any distro as long as you can install both Steam and the Proton stuff, which should cover basically everything out there as far as Linux is concerned anyway. So any Linux-based operating system should do you just fine. I'm going to go ahead and assume you know how to install Steam. Basically just click the install button and it should install. However, you can go to settings if you don't see it available to you, and then go to Steam Play and make sure you've got this guy checked. Enable Steam Play for supported titles, and then you can also enable Steam Play for all other titles. And that one is going to be important if you want to play Steam games that haven't quite cleared the bar for, Valve to call them quote unquote supported, but are still playable, for instance. So if you can't find your game, in this case Skyrim, then maybe check this box. I'm not 100% sure if Skyrim is listed as a quote unquote supported title yet, but it does absolutely play with 100% perfection. The other thing you're going to want to make sure of is that you're running with Proton 7.0 TAC 3. So you can select from a list here and choose one, and you can choose 7.0 TAC 3. And interestingly, there is a script out there that you can look for that will supposedly install ModOrganizer2 for you. I have attempted to use this in the past. Let's see. If you look here, this NW2 or MO2, sorry, MO2 installer, in here, these guys are supposed to be able to install this for you. But my experience with this is that one, it asks you to use the 6.3 version of Proton, which in my experience has had negative effects on Skyrim itself. So for instance, there may be some extra launch or start commands or things that you want to do in order to make it actually work properly, whereas 7.03 works out of the box with no issue. So I would recommend highly that you just switch to 7.03 and use the method in this video rather than the script. And don't get me wrong, to the people who make that script, if you're watching this, I really appreciate the fact that you guys do stuff like that. I think that, quick, easy installers for stuff that shouldn't work on Linux is really, really great. But I think in this case, the script is a bit dated, and it's just easier to do it manually and by the method that I'm going to show you in this particular video. There's just way less mess to deal with. There's not any concern for what specific versions things need to be on. Just take the newest for the most part, and you should be good to go. So if you are, for instance, running on a newer version of Steam or of Steam Play here, and you want to keep that version here, but you find out that a newer version for some reason breaks Skyrim or doesn't work well with Skyrim, what you can do is you can right click on it and then go to properties and then go to compatibility. And in compatibility, you can select your specific version right here in this drop down as well. And you can check this box if this is obviously grayed out, check this box and then select your version here. And that will get you going as far as running a specific version of Proton or a specific compatibility layer for that specific title, instead of having it just blanketly target every title on your list, as what would happen if you went to Steam and then settings for the global list, obviously. So once you have that done, you should be able to find Skyrim on your list if you've purchased it legitimately. These are both legitimate purchases. And then you'll click install. Now, for those of you wondering, should you install Skyrim Elder Scrolls, this version of it, which is commonly referred to as Legendary Edition or Old Rim. The naming schemes, by the way, for Skyrim are a bit confusing if you've never tried to mod Skyrim before. But yeah, this title here is the original 2013 version of the game, which is commonly referred to as Old Rim or Legendary Edition. And this is the title that is Skyrim Special Edition, as indicated by its tagline here. But interestingly, there is a newer thing called Anniversary Edition. And the way you'll know the difference is if you are running an up-to-date version of Skyrim Special Edition on your Steam platform here, you are probably running Anniversary Edition. Unless you have specifically prevented it from upgrading or you have specifically downgraded your version, you are on the Anniversary Edition despite what this tagline says. So I definitely recommend Special Edition. Anyway, again, once you're done and you're happy with what you've got, click install, and that's it. You're done. The game is installed. You're good to go. You can run it however you want. I do recommend, before you get started on trying to mod it, that you at least launch the game one time. I would get all the way in and maybe even create a character, get all the way to where you're naming your character and you save them out at one point, just after the beheadings and stuff in the first scene, if you've never played. Sorry, spoiler alert. But yeah, very first scene of the game. Get past that, then save and get out of the game. And this way, what you do is you ensure all of your folders, your save folders, everything is populated. And that'll prevent you from being confused about why things aren't where they should be or why things look funny for you. Yeah, if you just run the game, it'll populate everything and make it look right. And that should give you a much better clean slate to build on top of effectively. So how do we get this guy to actually work, especially if we're not going to use this fun little, script here? Well, what I recommend you do is you go to ModOrganizer2, just search it out, and you should be able to download it. They'll have a couple of different versions of it or whatever. Some of them have an extractable archive or whatever. Just download the newest version. It's a .exe, so it's a Windows executable file. Just download that guy. You can use any version of it you want. It'll work, but as far as I know. But I've tested generally with this particular version, and it seems to work perfectly. So I would highly recommend this edition of it, just to make it, work for the first time, and then get all experimental if you want. But again, if they have a newer version now, try that. I haven't looked at the versions in a while. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and install based on this one because it's what I know works. So what we're going to do is we're going to pop open a terminal. And if you're scared of the terminal, yeah, if you're terminal shy or whatever, then I would highly consider you just run with the stock Skyrim, even if you're on Windows, because modding Skyrim is a rabbit hole and it gets really crazy and there's a lot to it. And if you're not a technical person such that you're afraid of terminals, then chances are your ability to mod Skyrim is going to be greatly diminished anyway. So yeah, Skyrim will work out of the box if you just click play here. And it'll work just fine, and you can be happy with your game. But if you want to get into modding, technically, I think you can do these things without the terminal, but I find it easier to build and test the commands in the terminal, because in the terminal, they're a bit more verbose, so you can get some more feedback on what's going on. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and show you the commands now. Basically, what we're going to do is I'm going to piecemeal this command in here. So here we have two environment variables. That's what these are. There's no actual command here just yet, so I just want to piecemeal this in here so you pay attention to it one part at a time so that you really understand it. Because part of being successful here is understanding how Proton works and how Wine works. Okay, so there's certain fundamental aspects of Wine and Proton that you're going to want to have an understanding of in order to kind of know what's going on and why things are working the way they are. So I'm going to try my best to break that down for you. So this first bit here, this Steam Compact Client install path equals user game Steam, that is just telling it where the Steam binary on your system is, right? So for me, that's in user games Steam. If you don't know where your binary is, or it's not where it is on mine, which is Debian, by the way, Debian stable as of, this date, January 17th, 2022, is Debian Bullseye. And here you can find it in this path. So user games Steam, right? But if yours is in a different location because you're on a different distribution, or maybe it got changed in the future or something, and you're watching this video in the past, or you're watching this video in the future and it's different now or whatever, or maybe your installation method was different for some reason and it put it in a different spot. Anyway, the way you can find your binary is use the whereas command in the terminal. So just type where is Steam and where is space Steam, and you should get a path to it. You can also use the locate command, although that may return more than you bargained for, and also the find command. And if you're not aware of the find command, or you know about the find command but it's daunting, or you don't like it, or you're not used to it, or you don't know how it works, I'm probably going to make a video on the find command in the future, because the find command is genius and you need to understand it. But anyway, that's beside the point of this video. For now, just find your Steam binary, give it this path to this and assign this path to your environment variable here. Make sure that this is case sensitive and the underscores are all in the right spot. And then the second variable, because you have a space here, so pay attention to this fact that there's a space here, and then you're going to have steam compatdata path equals, and the tilde, if you're not a Linux aficionado, is a shortcut for the home directory. So basically I'm saying my user's home directory, and then the dot here, so this is a /, so this is saying the next path, the next directory below your home directory, right? And then the dot means it's a hidden folder or a hidden file. In this case, it's a folder. So I have a .steam folder in my home directory, which is my hidden folder for where all the Steam stuff goes. In there, I've got a Debian installation folder, and that's actually, I think, a symlink to another folder called Steam, which is in the same path. So if, for instance, you're on Fedora or Arch or some other Linux distribution, you may have a different thing. So it may be, for instance, Fedora installation on a Fedora one. I'm not sure about that because I've never done this on a different distribution before, but just keep in mind that yours might not say Debian installation if you're on, say, Ubuntu or something else. So just be aware. There is the universal one that is Steam, so you can put another, Steam here instead of Debian installation, and it may work for you, but check that that's actually in there. And then below that, you've got steamapps, compatdata, and then this crazy number here. So that crazy number is actually your Steam ID for your game. And the way you can find your Steam ID for your game, which, by the way, should be the same as mine here, but just so that you know how to find them, if you come into your Steam application, and then you click on your store page here, and then you right-click, pause that, and then you right-click, and then you go copy link address, and then in here, I'll just open another terminal for you, and then I'll blow that up for you so you can see better. And then if I paste that, oops, that's not what I wanted. Let's try copy page URL again. I think that's what I did, copy page URL, and then let's paste that. Yes, so that's what I wanted. So you can see that, and you can also do this in your browser. You don't have to do it in a terminal, but just paste the URL somewhere, Notepad, whatever you want. And then from here, you can use, you can follow this URL to this spot here, which should look pretty familiar because that is in fact your Steam ID for your application. And so you take that number and that'll tell you which folder you need here, basically. So what we're actually telling this is effectively where your wine prefix is. So what's a wine prefix? A wine prefix basically is a way where you can run different versions of wine with different configurations for different games or pieces of software. So for instance, if you had a piece of software that ran well on an earlier version of Wine, but then you have other pieces of software on your system, games, whatever, that run well on older versions of, or newer versions of Wine, then you can have both of those things and reap the benefits of both applications effectively. You don't have to choose between games that run well on older versions of Wine or games that run well on newer versions of Wine. Wine is designed in such a way where you can run any version of Wine right alongside any other version of Wine, and your system will be just fine having done this. And that is accomplished in part through Wine prefixes. So what you need to know about this path here, though, is this ID here is not the actual prefix. Below this is a folder called PFX, and that's where your prefix is actually going to start. That's going to come in to more of an importance later. But for now, just understand that this is the path above where your wine prefix actually begins. Okay, so now that we have that established, we know what these two variables are. You need to actually prefix your command with these two variables. Otherwise, your Proton command is going to complain that you're missing some things. So that is something to keep in mind when you're running this. So now I'll give you the next bit of the command. So if I copy this piece here, this is going to be the actual way to execute the command. So we're just going to put a space there, right? And then we're going to put the next bit of the command. And so we're going to give it the path to our Proton binary, which is going to live in Steam, Debian installation, just as the other one did, steamapps, common, and then Proton. And then you have a version number. Now, be aware that this version number is very important here because this is very much the same as selecting your version number from these drop-downs in here, like I showed you before. So if you change this here, that's what your ModOrganizer2 is actually going to run with. So if you put 6.0 there, it would run with the 6.0 version, basically. And it seems that Steam only tracks the major versions because you'll remember that I put 7.03, I think, in the dropdown, but this just says 7.0. I think that's just because it only tracks the major versions. I don't think it actually creates extra folders for the little minor versions. So just pick the, the major version of the folder. So in this case, it would be 7.0. In the older case, it would be 6.0, et cetera, and so forth, right? And then under that, you've got your Proton binary. Now, do not be confused, because inside of that directory, you've also got a bin and then wine and wine64, et cetera, and so forth. Yes, you can use those. No, they do not work the same way. And if you do use them, it is actually technically a little bit easier to get it to launch with those, because you don't need as much of this variable stuff up at the top here. But keep in mind that if you do use those, you're going to experience huge lag and frame rate penalties in your game. The Proton wrapper is designed to allow your game to run better and smoother. It's what gives it all the fixes and the Proton stuff that makes Proton so powerful. If you bypass that and just use the default wine binary in there, it's not going to run well at all. And I know this because I originally tried it. And basically what would happen is I would run the game from here, and it would run great, but then I would run it from my ModOrganizer2, even with all of the mods turned off, even without skse or anything turned on, and it would run like garbage. And the reason is because I was using those wine binaries rather than this Proton one, because I didn't know how to use it yet until I figured all this out. So once you've got that down and you're pointed at the right Proton binary that makes you happy, then you're going to put another space, and we're going to give it an action, and this action is going to be run. And then we're going to give it a path to our installation file here. So basically, in my case, that's going to be tilde/dot and then Skyrim. And then let's do this. Actually, oh yeah, it's not that. That's why Skyrim. And then, yeah, it's this one here. So we're just going to do this mod archive. And then in here, we've got our ModOrganizer2 executable file here, okay? So this is what we're actually going to point this at. So again, this is the home directory, and then I've got this subdirectory, and this is just where I've chosen to place this ModOrganizer2 folder, because this is where I place all my mods and stuff as I'm downloading them. Now, granted, I don't actually need to really do this anymore, except for some very small certain mods, because I now have this thing set up as a first-class citizen, where I can, just click the ModOrganizer link from Nexus Mod Manager's website or whatever, the Nexus website. So I can click the ModOrganizer downloader link or whatever, and it will just download it straight inside of here. And that's even without doing anything special. Like, I'm not running a special edition of Firefox that's really a Windows version or anything like that. Nope, it's a standard Linux binary Firefox, and it does it. And I'll show you the magic behind that in just a moment. But basically, at this point, we're going to have our ModOrganizer2. And at this point, we've done everything we need to do to get our ModOrganizer2 to run, or at least to run the installer. So now we're just going to press enter. And this is going to bring up our installation tool. So I'm just going to zoom the screen in a little bit here for you. And let's see if I can actually do this. There it is. Okay. So I'm going to try to keep my mouse stable, because as you could see, the KDE zoom feature moves the screen around a lot, and I don't want to make you go cross-eyed. So I'm going to try to keep it as stable as possible, but it is going to kind of slide around a little bit here. Anyway, so what we're going to do is we're going to click this accept, of course. I'm going to go to next, and then here I'm going to take the default path. You can, of course, change this if you like, but I'm going to take the default. And then here you're going to scroll all the way down to the bottom, and you're going to uncheck this add Windows Defender exclusions, because you don't need that, because we're not running Windows Defender. So now we can click next, and then we can take the default here is what I would recommend. Well, actually, no, you can just tell it not to create a start menu folder. That doesn't matter. We're going to take care of that ourselves in a minute here. And then click next. Tell it not to create a desktop shortcut. Click next. Here you just click install. Now, of course, I'm going to click cancel because I've already got mine installed, but you should be able to click install, and it'll run through the installation, and then you'll have a finish button, etc., and so forth. It's pretty straightforward from this point on, right? So after this, I'm going to assume that worked for you and you've got your setup installed. So let me just get back to the proper zoom level here. And so now I'm going to show you how to actually launch the ModOrganizer tool. So we're going to go ahead and copy the command down to this component here. And actually, yeah, down to that component there. And then we're going to do tilde/.steam. And that's actually the command there, the full path for it. So it actually lives in this Debian installation, steamapps, compatdata. And then, of course, your your Steam app ID. And then if you remember, I told you there was a prefix directory below. That's that PFX directory there. And so this is where this becomes more pertinent. So in here, you've got drive C. It should be obvious what drive C is, I would hope, C:, right? And then here you've got that path that we set in your installer. So in my case, I left it default, so it'll be modding mo2 for me. If you changed it, update your path here accordingly. And then you've got ModOrganizer2.exe, and that is the actual binary for ModOrganizer2. And in your case, if you press enter now, it should in fact launch ModOrganizer2 for you. But this isn't good enough. We don't want to have to enter this stupid command in every single time. That's just silly. So instead, we're going to make us a little shortcut. And there's a couple of different ways to do this. Now, I am on KDE here. And so if you're on KDE, you can follow along with me now. If you're not on KDE, don't worry. I will show you an alternative method that is a bit more desktop agnostic, desktop environment agnostic, after I show you the KDE method here. So if you're on KDE, you can right-click on your start menu or your main menu or your kicker menu or whatever you want to call it. In Linux, I tend to refer to it as the main menu or the application launcher. And then you're going to click Edit Applications here, okay? And this is going to bring up this little dialog here. And in here, you can expand this out. What I normally do is you can put it anywhere you want, but I prefer to stick it in the games directory. And then I created sub-menus for it, but you can do it however you prefer. But I scroll all the way down, and then I click Mods, and then I click Skyrim. And in here is where I actually placed the ModOrganizer2 shortcut that I made. And you can do that by clicking this Add New Item. And of course, add new submenu to add new submenus if you wish to subfolder it out, etc. and so forth, right? So now, once we have this all done and we've got our new item, you can effectively, create your name for it, your description, and then this command here is obviously where we're going to copy and paste this command here, and you can see the end of it. It looks pretty familiar, I would imagine. You're just going to copy and paste that into this command blank here. I enable launch feedback. You don't have to, but you can if you want. All that does is make like your icons down here bounce when stuff is launching, and sometimes it'll put like a little bouncing cursor or bouncing icon next to your mouse cursor maybe, depending on what you've configured KDE to do when it's getting launch feedback. And if you check the only show when logged into Plasma, it means that if you have multiple desktop environments or, a window manager or something installed outside of KDE, when you go in there, you won't see that in the menu if you do that. I don't recommend checking that box. Over here in Advanced, you can set a work path. I don't do that. I would leave all this stuff blank. You can create a shortcut key. So if you want to do something like, window key MO or something like that, you can do that here. You just click that, and then you'll be able to type what keys you want, and you'll get your shortcut set. And then when you enter that keystroke, when you do those keystrokes on your keyboard, it'll launch ModOrganizer2 for you. Personally, I don't think it's necessary because, I don't use ModOrganizer2 that friggin' much that it requires its own shortcut, but, it's there if you need it. One other thing to note is you can set an icon for it by clicking this little square here. Yours should be blank by default. You'll notice mine has that little MO icon in there. So the way you do that is you download an icon from, say, you go to open your web browser, go to like Google, and then you do an image search for ModOrganizer2 icons. And then in there, you can find an icon that will normally satisfy your requirements. Download it. You can place it somewhere on your file system, and then you can point to it from, using the dialogues that pop up within this. There should be a browse dialog, and then you can point to something that is, outside of what the default icon sets are that you get. Once you're happy with your settings, click Save, and that will add an icon, a shortcut in your Start menu. Because when I launch this, I definitely go over here to my application launcher, main menu, etc. And I just type ModOrganizer2 and press Enter, or I find it in my menu and click on it, whatever the case. But I definitely do not enter this command in every single time I want to launch it. That would be silly. So at this point, you can close this down. Now, if you are on a Linux distribution that does not have this lovely little shortcut here for you, if you have a desktop environment that doesn't have an easy way to make shortcuts like that, I will show you an alternative method of making them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to CD and then ~/ actually right here. So in this local share applications directory, which by the way, there is a local share icons directory, hint, hint, for that icon you download. but there's also a local share applications directory. And in here, you should have these desktop files. Now, what I recommend you do is you clone them. Your desktop file here, make a new one basically for your application. So in this case, you would do like CP, and then, I don't know if there's a Firefox one in here, .desktop, whatever one you want. There should be a whole bunch. And then in here, you can, make ModOrganizer2.desktop like that. That's what I would recommend you do. So in here, if I do ModOrganizer2, I'll show you what it looks like. I already have it open somewhere else on my system. That's why it behaved that way. But anyway, you can see here that I have my command under this exec. So you're going to want to start it off with this desktop entry. That's very important. If you look at any other one, it'll have that. And any other directives in the one that you copy from, you can feel free to remove them. But, whatever your situation is or whatever you feel you need, you can keep or use however you prefer to do it. But you're going to want to set this exec is an important one, and that's going to be the path to your command that you had before. Your generic name is effectively the same as the description in the dialog I showed you before, so it's just a longer description so that you can, put more information about what your application actually is in there. Your icon is a path to your icon, obviously. In my case, I placed it in, my home directory and then downloads in the mod organizer. But again, you can move it if you are so inclined to that .local share and then icons directory. You can make a custom icons directory under there, or however you want to work it. It doesn't really matter. It's whatever you're comfortable with. If you want this in a more generic location, because this is going to make it so that it only works for your user. If you want it to work for multiple users, you'll have to put it in the global ones. So that'll be user local. And then in there, you'll have applications and all that stuff. Or I'm sorry, user share applications and user share icons. And then, so you have the name, obviously. And then I would just keep the rest of the stuff basically default. And that should really get you going. And then once you save it, you should see that icon appear in your menu. If you're on a different desktop that doesn't repull them every now and then, like Awesome Window Manager or something a little bit more basic, then you may need to relaunch your Awesome Window Manager or your Window Manager or whatever desktop environment you have in order to get it to appear in the menu. But once you have the desktop or the desktop file there, and your system is set up to do it. Basically, if it's set up to pull that area for desktop files to create menu items, then it should work. Otherwise, either you're putting it in an area where your desktop environment is not set up to pull, or you've created an error in your desktop file, or maybe you've created a typo in your file name. But basically, the important thing is that it ends in .desktop, that it's in a specific location where it pulls for them, and that it is the syntax on the inside of it is correct. As long as those things are true, you should get at least something in your menu. So at this point, you're good to go, right? You can launch your application and you're good, but this is not really good enough for me. I want the first-class citizen approach to this, so I want my mod organizer to be able to automatically download stuff if I tell it where to look. So for that, we're going to look in our actual install folder where that ModOrganizer.exe is. Which, if you remember from our other command we had before, which should be here. So this path here, right? I'm sorry, that's not what I want. Let's do. Yeah, that's not correct. Let's do this. Yeah, tilde/.steam. This guy. Okay, so in this directory here, right? You have this ModOrganizer.exe. And as you can see, you also have this nxmhandler.exe. What I recommend you do is create a shell script. So you have an nxmhandler shell script here. And then put the following in it. So here, if I do vi, and you can use nano or whatever text editor you want to do this. But I recommend vi if you're a moderate Linux user or a moderately skilled Linux user. We're just going to go into Steam. And then Debian installation, and then in here we're going to go to steamapps, and then in here we're going to go to compatdata, our 4000 or 489830 path there, our pfx, and then drive C, and then modding, and then mo2, and then in here we'll have our nxmhandler, which you don't actually need to create this shell script in here, by the way, at all, right? You can create it anywhere on your system you like, and actually there's a better location that I'll show you how to do this in, but I put mine in here, or at least I created mine in here, and then I moved it elsewhere. So this is just where I have my demonstration file effectively at. But you can place it literally anywhere on your system, and then I'll show you where to move it so that it works better. So if you want to just do it in tilde and just to make it easier, that's fine. And also the name doesn't even matter. So nxmhandler doesn't matter here. I do that for consistency reasons. I do not put a .sh after the nxmhandler. You'll see why that is later. But basically the gist of it is it's for convenience sake. I don't put the .sh there because I don't want to type .sh every time I want to point to it or whatever. I want it to look more like a normal command on my system, and those don't tend to end with .sh. So basically, you want to start your shell script off with bang. I'm sorry, crunch or sharp bang, bin bash or hash if you call it a hash, and then bang or exclamation point, exclamation mark or whatever, bin bash, and then here we're going to type the same command we would before. Down to our ModOrganizer2, except we're going to replace the ModOrganizer2.exe with our nxmhandler.exe. And the other difference is we're going to put this quoted $1 here. So what does that $1 do? Well, that's a fancy little bash variable that is basically saying the very first argument that is passed to our shell script, we're going to take that and we're going to substitute that guy right here. So basically what's going to happen is if you run this command, this nxmhandler shell script, right, with an argument, say that points to a mod that you can download, it's going to pass that over to our executable, and it's going to run that executable within our Proton wine context so that it basically automatically marries everything up and works as it should. And that is going to be very, very important. So the reason we need to make this shell script, basically, and you may be able to do this in other ways, like a .desktop file. I haven't really tested that. I just use the shell script in my case. But basically, the reason you want to do this is because if you just point it directly at the nxmhandler.exe, again, this is Linux, and Linux by default does not understand what the heck to do with an executable file. So we got to tell it we want wine to execute this executable file for us. And so in this case, we're using Proton with the wine, binaries in it, in order to put it basically in the same context and the same everything that we've set up the rest of our configuration in, right? So with this done, effectively, you can save this out however you like, right? And then what I recommend you do is you move it so move your nxmhandler or whatever, into this directory. So I do C user local bin. And then in here, you can see I have my nxmhandler. And the other thing you're going to want to do is you're going to do a chmod +x nxmhandler. And once it's in that user local bin, you may need to use sudo to do it, by the way. You may even need to use, well, you're probably going to need to use sudo to move it there in the first place. But just realize that once it's there, that might be an issue. There's also, I think, a .local bin that you can create to make it work that way for just your local user. This will make it global, effectively. If you put it in user local bin, any user on your system will be able to find and run that application. So just be aware of that. But anyway, so with that done, effectively, now you have this binary to your nxmhandler. So now if I run nxmhandler from anywhere I am on my system, I can provide it a path such as this here, which is one of those ModOrganizer paths, by the way, and it will totally download that. It will just plop it right inside my guy here and download it just like it would if I were on Windows. And what's interesting about that is it means that you could create, say, a file full of these, paths, and then you could simply make a for loop or something that reads them into this nxmhandler, and then you could have nxmhandler effectively automatically download a bunch of different versions of these things, just sort of automatically if you wanted to get all automated with it. But really, you don't need to worry about that. It's just sort of food for thought. But, if you wanted to make like an auto downloader or something to further automate things, you could. But really, this is for making your browser work. But we still have the problem of how the heck do we make our browser see this nxmhandler trick, right? Well, here's the thing. When it comes to Chrome, I don't really know. I'm sure there's an easy way to do it and you can Google it, but for Firefox, I have the ticket. So if you go to about:config, right? And then in here, you're going to want to accept this risk and continue. Basically, you're going to want to put in your search box this guy. Okay. Now, if you can't see that, let me blow this up for you real quick. So this is what we're going to put in here. This network.protocol attackhandler.expose.nxm. You're just going to search for that. Okay. So once we find that, let me zoom back out. So once you put that in there, you're going to see something like this sort of construct pop up here, right? And we're going to click this plus sign to create this thing. We're going to switch this over to false, and then we're going to just let it ride. Now that we've got that, we can go to our Nexus mod manager. So if I do Nexus mods or whatever. In fact, let's do Nexus mods Skyrim Special Edition. Hopefully there's nothing terribly inappropriate on the front of this thing here. Looks like we're in luck. Okay, so in here, right, if we click on a mod, and then we're going to scroll down and we're going to go to files, and then we're going to go to our mod manager download for this file. We're going to go down and we should see this slow download or fast download. If you're paying for a premium subscription, your fast download would be your best bet, I imagine, but I am not. So I'm going to click this slow download link, and then you should see your download has started. And basically, you may need, okay, yeah, you need to, in my case, I needed to click the click here button to download manually because it didn't automatically start. But either way, you should hopefully get this, allow this site to open the NXM link. You'll need to choose an application. At this point, we're going to click choose application, and we're going to click other application and click choose. And then here, we're going to point it at our NXM handler that we created. So you can see I have one here, but I'm going to do it from my user local. So if I go to my computer here, and then I click on user, USR, and then local, and then bin, which is where we put it, if you remember. And let me get past all this other script stuff that I've written in the past here, and we have nxmhandler. And at this point, I'm going to click open. And now you'll see I have nxmhandler here, and I'm going to click open link. And now what you should see is the download taking place inside my little organizer here. And from now on, as soon as you click the download link, it's going to do that. And I can actually tell this to cancel downloading because I don't actually want it to download that one. But yeah, so that makes it so that when you click these URLs, you automatically get your download now. And you can see that. So if I go back over here and I click my ModOrganizer link now, and I click slow download, actually, you can tell it to always do it. Choose application. Yeah, you want to select always so that it always does it. And then you do open link, and it should start it again. And I'm going to click cancel. And then I'm going to go back. I'm going to try it one more time. And we should see that it does it automatically now with no BS. There it goes. See? And so now you have the first-class citizen approach to being able to run your mods in ModOrganizer2 on Linux via Skyrim. It will run at 4K if you have a decent video card. I'm running a 1070, and I can do with most of my mods, pretty much all of my mods enabled, I can run it in at least 2K. Once I upgrade to the newer 30, X cards that I want to upgrade to, now that they're not, as rare as a unicorn swimming around in leprechaun gold at the end of a rainbow, hopefully I'll be able to get a nicer, newer card and be able to run this thing in 4K. But the point is that if you're running decent hardware, you should be able to get decent performance, just as you would on Windows. I haven't really noticed a big performance difference between Linux and Windows. Granted, I haven't tested this game on Windows in quite some time, but what I can say is it runs pretty darn well. I'm able to get, full frame rates, everything. It runs great, and hopefully you will too. So yeah, that should, I think, wrap up the video. I think that's basically got you in a spot where, you're good to go. Again, this isn't a mod tutorial. I'm not teaching you how to install mods. I'm not teaching you how to, set up your Skyrim with skse and all that. But just to give you one final peek, this is some of the stuff that I've been able to do. And so for these, you don't actually need to install them like any special way. You don't need to give them any Proton stuff because you're running them through this ModOrganizer2 application. You can just configure them in here as you would normally do, and just put them somewhere within your ModOrganizer directory structures, and you're good. So if you notice this PFX directory here, so this path, home, Steam, Debian installation, steamapps, compatdata, your ID, your PFX, drive C, and then all this. This is the path to your quote-unquote Windows computer that you're running within your Linux system, your Linux environment, okay? So this is going to be sort of your base of operations for installing stuff. So like if I go back up to drive C, you'll notice I do in fact have a program files directory and all that other stuff. So if you want to install other things or place other things within this structure, you can do it just as you normally would on any Windows system, and it should work, right? Now keep in mind this is a Windows machine and it does work off of the system registry, etc. and so forth. One other thing I should probably teach you before we go is, so this is where your mods are located. So if you go into Home, Steam, Debian installation, Steam apps, compatdata, then your Steam app ID, PFX, drive C, user, Steam user, app data. So your user for your application, by the way, is going to be Steam user. And then you'll have app data in there just like you would on a Windows system. And then you'll have your local directory in there, ModOrganizer, and then Skyrim Special Edition, and then mods. And that's where all your mods are technically going to be installed when you set them up to run in this. And if you go up a directory, you can see sort of the, overwrite and profiles and all the stuff that your ModOrganizer2 that you're used to from your ModOrganizer2. That's where it will all live. Probably much like it would on a actual Windows system. And then also you have your normal, I think this is actually still pointed at the Skyrim one. So to show you where your actual Skyrim folder is on your system, if you're not aware, if we go up to Steam apps here, and then in here we go to common instead of compatdata, and in here we should see our Skyrim directory. Skyrim Special Edition. Okay, so yeah, that's the downside of not using the terminal, is you got to eyeball everything. But anyway, in here you can see that you've got a data directory, and that's where all your mods would normally be installed if you weren't using a mod organizer tool for your deal. You've got you've got your data directory, and you've got everything all set up for you here. So that's your baseline directory in this path: Home, Steam, Debian installation, Steam apps, common, and then Skyrim Special Edition. Now, of course, if you're using the old RIM, you're going to have to translate accordingly, but it should be relatively the same. Just your Steam app ID will be different, and of course, your folder won't be called Skyrim Special Edition on the original game. And that's it. That should give you everything you need to know about being able to mod Skyrim as a first-class citizen. The things I've gotten to work are enbs. I've gotten Nemesis to work, fins. I've gotten, SKSE edit, body slide, loot, the creation kit, although I have noticed some bugs in the creation kit, but I think that may be more akin to the creation kit itself being kind of janky than anything else. But yeah, I've gotten tons of little tools to work. They're really simple to install and set up. They're basically set up just like they are on Windows. You just have to account for the fact that you've got to go, deep down these directory paths in order to find where stuff is really kind of supposed to go. But it works. It works pretty well, and it's pretty fantastic. So hopefully you guys have enjoyed this and learned a lot. I'm glad to finally be able to share this with you. Hopefully this recording is good and I can actually post it this time. Yeah, so hopefully I can make some more videos soon too, because I know I'm a drought when it comes to videos because my life is crazy. But anyway, yeah, see you guys in the next video. Enjoy.